Storytelling is a human technology for the construction of objective knowledge, where man-made false dichotomies are created and naturalized. History, for example, is storytelling by those in power to justify and maintain it, creating heroes and villains, fact and fiction, erasing many narratives and centering a few, and contributing to the continued violence towards oppressed groups. In science, narratives are drawn from selective data, such as in Darwin's theory of sexual selection, where scientific narratives pathologize queer behavior or presentations, projecting human biases onto the world around us to construct a binary of natural and unnatural in order to police gender and sexuality in culture. Similarly, religions have at their core a book of stories that create moral binaries. These narratives pre-exist us, and we are treated according to them from the moment we are born, and taught them from when we are too young to question. We become ourselves within cultural narratives. They shape us in ways we can't untangle. As Bruce Wexler writes in Brain and Culture, Neurobiology, Ideology, and Social Change, in addition to having the longest period in which brain growth is shaped by the environment, human beings alter the environment that shapes their brains to a degree without precedent among animals. These human alterations in the shared social environment include physical structures, laws and other codes of behavior, food and clothes, spoken and written language, and music and other arts. In recent decades, children in Euro-American societies have been raised in almost entirely human-created environments. It is this ability to shape the environment that in turn shapes our brains that has allowed human adaptability and capability to develop at a much faster rate than is possible through alteration of the genetic code itself. This transgenerational shaping of brain function through culture also means that the processes that govern the evolution of societies and cultures have a great influence on how our individual brains and minds work. This effect of the cultural context in which the brain develops in shaping the brain itself, and the fact that humans completely create the culture in which the brain develops, points to the inseparability of nature and culture, and the potential to shape ourselves and our context through the act of storytelling, by immersing ourselves in stories that complicate reductive cultural narratives. In Technologies of Gender, Teresa de Larreta sets out the need for feminist discourses to allow spaces to rewrite cultural narratives and to define the terms of another perspective, a view from elsewhere. This view from elsewhere can come not only in the content of the stories we tell, but the ways in which we tell them. In Ursula Le Guin's carrier bag theory of fiction, she sets out a model of storytelling as carrier bag. Rather than stories that create binaries of good and evil, true and false, and hero and villain, she expounds the value of narratives that hold many perspectives, and even opposing ideas together for consideration. Le Guin's carrier bag is a model of non-binary storytelling. In A Dream of Wholeness in Parts, two sides of an internalized false dichotomy sit across from each other. Their name is the construct. Their makeup is reimagined from the Dan role in Cantonese and Peking opera, the archetypal female lead, often a romantic interest of the Sang role, the male lead. One side's face is blue and pink, and her eyebrows slant up towards the center of her face, making her appear to have the classic characteristics of the Dan role: demure, innocent, soft. The other's face is green and yellow, Her eyebrows point downwards towards the center, making her appear angry or cruel, a villain. Roles in Cantonese and Peking opera are strict. There are 4 main roles: Dan, the female; Sang, the male; Jing, the warrior; Chao, the clown, that each come with their own specific makeup, gestural, costumes, and vocal styles. In traditional opera, makeup colors are also symbolic. Red or pink denotes loyalty and integrity, blue, vigor, yellow, treachery or slyness, green, irascibility. So when a character walks on stage, you immediately recognize not only their place in the narrative, but their temperament and the nature of their relationships to the other players. This becomes an ideal medium to draw on in thinking through and queering predetermined societal scripts, though queer people have been doing this in Cantonese opera in more and less obvious ways. Growing up, my grandmother's favorite Cantonese opera stars were Yam Kim Fai and Ba Shu Xin, both women who played romantic leads opposite each other. Yam Kim Fai always as the Sang role, Ba Shu Xin as the Dan role. My grandmother praises how convincing their on-screen love is, and their work together spans some 40 years and 60 productions. They didn't speak about their private lives. Yam passed in 1989. In remembrance, Pat quoted a verse from an ancient classic poem called Yellowbird. Could his life be redeemed, I would have given 100 lives for him. Queer people have often had to hide their realities in fantasy. This is not an uncommon story in Cantonese opera, where men and women may play either gender on stage but not off. Similarly, Western drag is a place where many trans people first allow themselves to play with gender in a culture whose confines are equally strict. Drag is an embodied speculative fiction, a bodily fantasy testing the boundaries of you and not you. In drag, fantasy and reality are held together in the carrier bag of the body, one informing and sometimes changing the other on a stage where, unlike the street, audiences lean into the fantasy. Here, the view from elsewhere is not only for the audiences in the telling or the showing, but for the storyteller in the experience of being treated as the fantasy they present. The construct's 2 selves have existed separately in performances for years. In A Dream of Wholeness in Parts, they meet for the first time. Trapped in their opposing roles, attention grows as they move chess pieces around a board. As one side of the construct's binary moves a bishop diagonally across the board into a fool's mate, the voiceover echoes. The name is the guest of the substance. If it were really the name of something, it would be the name of everything. Waking up from this dream, we encounter the universe walking through tropical flora on a man-made path. The universe's makeup is a reimagining of the Jing warrior role in Cantonese opera, often a god, whose faces are pictorial and tell stories in themselves. The universe's face shows a flower whose parts are the experience of his human senses. The leaves are his eyes, the stem a river which flows down his nose to roots which encircle his mouth. The flower blossoms over his third eye. The plant is an individual existing in its context of the landscape. The landscape foregrounds its own context of the galaxy it exists within. The universe embodied is both individual and context. He meets a banyan tree who reflects himself back at him. We were together before being alone, says the banyan. Then we were born, saying names in an effort to transcend the unbearable isolation of having names. I am just you, awake. The universe and the construct journey through dreams of binaries that they themselves embody, never certain what is reality and what is fantasy, performance or authenticity, or whether the difference is important. The artificial fixity of things divided up by intellect, dreaming and waking, feminine and masculine, right and wrong, beginning and ending, nature and culture, human and nature, nature and nurture, mind and body, living and dying, self and other, thinking and feeling, subject and object, together and separate, good and evil, inside and outside, personal and universal, liked and disliked, fiction and truth, performance and authenticity, fantasy and reality, nothing and everything, objective and subjective, mine and yours. Without an other, there is no self. Without self, no choosing one thing rather than another. Le Guin's work was heavily influenced by Taoism, having herself published an English version of the Tao Te Ching. In the second foundational text of Taoism, the philosopher has a dream that he's a butterfly that is so vivid that when he wakes up, he is no longer sure if he's a man dreaming he's a butterfly or a butterfly dreaming he's a man. Between Zhangji and the butterfly, there was necessarily a dividing. Just this is what is meant by the transformations of things. Similarly, in Effective Cyborgs by Barbara Fornsler describes grasping Ettinger's matrixial border space as taking everything you know, the way you have come to know it, and even the manner by which you think the things you know as the phallocentric matrix. Moving outside the matrix is like trying to wake up from a dream you did not know you were having and simultaneously describing your slumber to those who share the nightmare, but refuse to accept the illusion exists. Every word you speak in the dream drags you further into accepting the dream as truth, as the reality you thought you were in. By engaging with the dream, we make it all the more real. Turning this around, taking reality as the matrix of entangled narratives of so-called natural binaries, we should take seriously the project of speculating, or dreaming up narratives where cultural contexts and the bodies that occupy them can embody different relationships that complicate boundaries between each other and within themselves. By engaging with them, we make them more real. In a scene reminiscent of Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love, a film where two individuals, both heartbroken and in love, are kept apart by social conventions, the universe and the construct encounter each other in an alley. In a brief moment, they notice each other, lock eyes. The universe, styled after Tony Leung, lingers on the construct. Is something familiar about her? The construct, blushingly, looks away, unable to hide a smile or recognize herself in someone else. The universe and the construct are themselves two dreams of a single embodiment, revealed in the border space of the northern coast of Taiwan. On a rocky edge on the East China Sea, the hybrid figure poses as Botticelli's Venus, as naked as a construct can be.